The winner is Art Carney in...
Thank you, Glenda. Ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Academy.
It was television magic, pure and simple. As Ed Norton and Alice Cramden on The Honeymooners, Art Carney and Audrey Meadows had a comedic chemistry that has kept audiences laughing for generations. Their friendship on screen felt so real, a perfect harmony of talent. But the story goes that when the cameras stopped rolling for good, a strange and heavy silence fell between them. And according to decades of reports, Carney and Meadows would never speak again. There wasn't a public screaming match or some dramatic fallout. Just nothing. For years, fans have been left wondering why. What could have happened behind the scenes that would lead one of TV's most beloved co-stars to just permanently walk away from the other without a single word? Fans love to think that the casts of their favorite shows become these tight-knit families off-camera, but The Honeymooners wasn't that kind of set. There was mutual respect, for sure, but there was also a professional distance that would surprise a lot of people. The story of Art Carney and Audrey Meadows isn't one of scandal. It's a quiet, almost haunting tale of two brilliant performers whose connection just ended. To get why, you first have to understand the world that created them, the chaotic, high-pressure, brilliant world of 1950s live television, long before The Honeymooners became the classic 39 episodes we all know and love today. It was a recurring sketch on Jackie Gleason's hugely popular variety shows, first Cavalcade of Stars and later The Jackie Gleason Show. This was the true golden age of television, a time when everything was broadcast live. There were no second takes, no room for error, and an unbelievable amount of pressure on the actors. And at the dead center of this universe was Jackie Gleason, a man so larger than life, so talented, and so demanding that people just called him the Great One. Gleason's comedic genius was off the charts, but so was his famous ego and his very strange way of working. He claimed to have a photographic memory, which he used as a reason to almost never rehearse. He'd often read a script just once, watch his co-stars rehearse with a stand-in, and then walk out on stage for the live show, expecting everyone to keep up with his ad-libs. It was a high-wire act without a net, and it created an incredibly intense environment. Joyce Randolph, who played Trixie Norton, remembered that you just didn't challenge Gleason. You don't even talk to Jackie, let alone ask for anything, she once said. This was the world that forged the cast of The Honeymooners. Putting the four of them together was a stroke of genius. Jackie Gleason was, of course, the loud-mouthed bus driver Ralph Cramden. For his sharp, long-suffering wife, Alice, the original sketch actress was Pert Kelton. But when the show was about to become a full-fledged sitcom, Kelton was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, and they needed a new Alice. In walked Audrey Meadows. At first, Gleason said no, thinking she was way too glamorous to play a working-class housewife from Brooklyn. But Meadows was tough and determined. She hired a photographer to take pictures of her first thing in the morning, with no makeup and wearing a frumpy housecoat, and sent them to Gleason. That convinced him. She got the part and brought a cool, deadpan brilliance that was the perfect anchor for Gleason's explosive energy. For Ralph's upstairs neighbor and goofy best friend, Ed Norton, Gleason needed a special kind of talent. He needed someone who could be silly but lovable, a sidekick who wouldn't try to steal the spotlight but could still own a scene with just a look. He found that in Art Carney. Carney was a gifted mimic and radio actor who had served in World War II, an experience that left him with a limp from a shrapnel wound that he carried for the rest of his life. Unlike Gleason, Carney was shy and withdrawn off stage. In a 1999 interview, Joyce Randolph called him a very shy, quiet man, adding, "You don't get to know Art right away at all, or ever maybe." He was the quiet genius, the perfect comedy partner for the loud, expansive Gleason. Rounding out the group was Joyce Randolph as Trixie, Ed Norton's wife. Gleason had spotted her in a Clorox commercial and cast her. She was a crucial part of the show, but her role was often in the background. The main comedy and drama happened between Ralph and Alice, and the crazy schemes were between Ralph and Ed. This meant Gleason, Meadows, and Carney were the ones who worked most closely together, building that legendary on-screen dynamic. On screen, they were pure magic. The chemistry between the four of them, and especially between Carney's Norton and Meadows' Alice, was the bedrock of the show's success. They felt like a real, if hilarious, family. The Cramdens' tiny apartment on Chauncey Street was the backdrop for some of the most famous moments in TV history, and the way the characters bounced off each other felt real, lived in, and incredibly funny. Art Carney's Ed Norton was just a masterpiece of physical comedy. With his signature fedora and vest, Norton was the lovable doofus, the sewer worker with big ideas and a childlike spirit that drove Ralph Cramden absolutely crazy. Carney's performance was a masterclass in precision, from the way he'd flamboyantly warm up his arms to sign a letter like a concert pianist, to his iconic, "Hello, ball," at the bowling alley. He could take over a scene with pure physicality. Even with his massive ego, Gleason knew how talented Carney was. Carney wasn't just getting laughs, he was giving the character a real heart. Above all, Norton was a loyal friend, always there for his pal Ralph, no matter how nuts the scheme was. And then you had Audrey Meadows as Alice Cramden, who was really the anchor of the whole show. Back then, most sitcom wives were pretty one-dimensional, but Alice was sharp, practical, and was never, ever intimidated by her husband's empty threats to send her to the moon. Her sharp stare could stop one of Ralph's tirades cold, and the way she delivered a comeback was just perfect. She was the voice of reason that all of Ralph's schemes crashed against. The relationship between Ed Norton and Alice on screen was particularly special. They were like partners in crime when it came to managing Ralph. Alice would often give Ed this look, a mix of annoyance and affection, silently acknowledging the ridiculous man they both had to put up with. There was a real warmth between them. It was this dynamic that made their world feel so real and made fans believe that warmth had to exist off-screen, too. They were a perfect comedy team. Gleason was the thunder, Meadows was the solid ground, and Carney was the unpredictable lightning. In a 1955 interview, Carney himself said of Gleason, "Our comedy styles seem to be made for each other. That just happened. We didn't plan it that way." That unplanned, magical chemistry is exactly what made the show timeless. And it's why so many fans were so shocked to learn that after the show ended, the effortless connection between Art Carney and Audrey Meadows just dissolved into a permanent, baffling silence. For decades, fans just assumed the cast of The Honeymooners was a close-knit family. How could they not be? The chemistry was too good, the timing too perfect. But the truth about the set was a lot more complicated. Behind all the laughter were four very different people working in a very stressful environment, who almost never socialized once the workday was done. And that's the first big clue to understanding the silence. Their relationship was almost entirely professional, not personal. Let's be clear, the set was Gleason's world. His genius was matched only by his volatile personality. The cast and crew knew it. His refusal to rehearse created an atmosphere that was always on edge. It might have kept the performances fresh, which is what Gleason wanted, but it was also incredibly stressful for his co-stars. Audrey Meadows, though, was a pro. She was sharp, disciplined, and had a brilliant mind for the business. She wasn't just an actress, she negotiated her own deals and held her own against a force of nature like Gleason. She spoke about her work with a kind of business-like respect. She once famously described the on-set dynamic in a way that amounted to, "We clocked in, we clocked out." It was magic on screen, but quiet behind the scenes. That says it all. It was a job they did brilliantly, but it wasn't a family get-together. And then there was Art Carney. Ed Norton was the life of the party, but Carney was the exact opposite. He was a deeply private, quiet, and introverted man who really struggled with being famous. People who were there said Carney's routine was always the same: he'd show up, give a genius performance, and leave the second he was done. He rarely hung around the set. Joyce Randolph confirmed this, calling him a shy, quiet man. He wasn't being rude, it was how he coped. Carney was a sensitive guy in a tough business, and retreating into his own world was how he protected himself, and it's this huge difference in their personalities that really gets to the heart of the mystery. Audrey Meadows was a confident, tough professional who could handle the shark-infested waters of show business. Art Carney was a more fragile, sensitive artist who found fame deeply unsettling. He once admitted the attention made him uncomfortable and that he was happier when nobody knew his name. There are no stories of big fights or feuds between Carney and Meadows. By all accounts, they were polite and professional. But there was no real friendship forming, either. They were colleagues, not best friends. They made magic together on a soundstage, but they lived in completely different emotional worlds. So when the show ended, they didn't have a friendship to fall back on, just a pile of shared scripts. That professional distance, mixed with Carney's private nature and his own personal battles, set the stage for the quiet split that was to come. The only thing holding them together was the show itself, and when that was over, the threads just disappeared. So when the classic 39 run of the Honeymooners wrapped up in 1956, the actors all went their own ways. Jackie Gleason would bring the show back in different forms over the years, and Audrey Meadows would even return for some of the reunion specials. But one thing was strangely final: after that original show ended, Art Carney and Audrey Meadows reportedly never spoke to each other again. No phone calls, no catching up at events, nothing. When chances for retrospectives came up, they would turn them down separately. It wasn't a loud falling out that ended up in the papers. It was a total and complete silence, a void that just got stranger as the years went on. So, the big question that has fascinated fans for decades is still, why? What on earth could have happened to cause such a permanent break between two people who made such harmony on screen? The answer isn't one single event. It's a complicated mix of Carney's personal demons, his need to escape the shadow of Ed Norton, and the simple, sad fact that they were never really friends in the first place. To even begin to understand Carney's retreat, you have to look at the immense personal battles he was fighting. Throughout his life, Carney struggled with crippling anxiety, stage fright, depression, and alcoholism. These weren't small problems, they were serious conditions he managed to hide from the public during the show's peak. Friends said he would sometimes get physically sick before live shows, just terrified of going on stage. In a rare candid moment, he once said, "Acting was something I loved, but it scared the hell out of me." After the Honeymooners, these struggles got worse. In 1961, just a few years after the show ended, Carney had what his family called an emotional collapse. He publicly admitted he was dependent on alcohol, amphetamines, and barbiturates and spent nearly 6 months in a sanitarium to recover. This crisis changed him. For Carney, the character of Ed Norton and the fame from the Honeymooners became tied to this dark, painful time in his life. To heal, it seems he had to cut himself off from everything and everyone connected to it. On top of all that, Carney felt completely trapped by the role of Ed Norton. He was a truly versatile actor, capable of incredible dramatic work, but casting directors couldn't see past the silly sewer worker. He once complained, "How would you like to go through life with your name synonymous with sewage?" He would finally prove his incredible range in 1975 when he won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Harry and Tonto, beating giants like Al Pacino and Jack Nicholson. The win was a huge validation, but it also highlighted his desperate need to be seen as more than Ed Norton. Walking away from the legacy of the Honeymooners, and the people involved, was his way of taking back his own identity. He just didn't want to be Ed Norton anymore. Audrey Meadows, on the other hand, had a totally different path. She moved on, became a successful businesswoman, and even served as a director of a bank. She was proud of her work on the Honeymooners and always spoke of it warmly, but she wasn't defined by it in the same way Carney felt he was. It's important to remember that Carney's withdrawal wasn't just about Meadows. He generally pulled back from the Hollywood spotlight, choosing a quiet life in Connecticut. While he did reunite with Gleason for some specials, their relationship was professional. Without a professional reason to connect with Meadows, his natural instinct was to pull away completely. The silence likely wasn't caused by a specific fight with Audrey, it was caused by his deep, personal need to leave that entire chapter of his life behind. While Art Carney chose a life of quiet retreat, Audrey Meadows would occasionally offer little hints about the mystery. She never once mentioned a feud or an argument. Instead, her words always seemed to carry a sense of sadness and a quiet acceptance of a connection that had just vanished. And it's here that we get the most telling clues, not about a dramatic fight, but a quiet, sad truth. In her 1994 memoir, Love, Alice, published just 2 years before she died, Meadows wrote fondly about the show. But her comments on Art Carney were noticeably brief. She called him brilliant and gentle, but she didn't describe any kind of real friendship. In later interviews, she gave a little more insight. When asked directly about her relationship with Carney after the show, she reportedly paused before giving a very careful answer. "We worked well together, but we were different people. I don't think Art was ever truly comfortable around anyone, not even himself." This wasn't an attack, it was a sad observation from a woman who worked beside him but felt she never really knew him. Perhaps the most heartbreaking clue comes from a story about one of her final interviews. In 1996, while battling lung cancer, she allegedly told a friend that she always hoped we would speak again, even just once. She made it clear there was no bad blood, but then added a line that sums up the whole story: "Sometimes silence is louder than an argument." She went on to guess at the reason for his distance, with a theory born from empathy, not anger. She believed Carney blamed himself for something during that dark period of his life and that it simply hurt him to be around anything that reminded him of the man he used to be. It seems she accepted that the door was closed, not because she was angrily shut out, but because Carney had quietly locked it from the inside to protect himself from his own memories. The ultimate proof of this permanent distance came on February 3, 1996, when Audrey Meadows passed away at 73. Tributes poured in from all over Hollywood. But the one person who remained completely silent was Art Carney. He issued no public statement, no condolence message, nothing. To many, this silence felt cold. But when you look at it through the lens of his lifelong struggles and Meadows' own sad understanding, it looks different. It was the final, quiet confirmation of a decision he had made 40 years earlier, to completely cut himself off from the world of the Honeymooners. The silence wasn't an insult, it was the painful, final act of his long retreat. So, what really happened between Art Carney and Audrey Meadows? Was there a secret fight? A hidden betrayal? The truth, it seems, is a lot more subtle and a lot more human than that. There was no big event. Their story is about two very different people who created magic together in a TV studio but were never going to be friends in real life. The set of The Honeymooners was a workplace. They were brilliant at their jobs, but when the job was over, there was no real friendship to keep them connected. For Audrey Meadows, a strong and practical professional, it was a wonderful chapter in a long life. She moved on, always looking forward, even if she carried a quiet sadness about the connection that was lost. For Art Carney, it was so much more. He was a man of incredible talent but also deep sensitivity, haunted by anxiety, depression, and a level of fame he never wanted. The character of Ed Norton, a role that brought joy to millions, became a painful symbol of a dark time in his own life. His withdrawal wasn't about being mean to Audrey Meadows, it was about saving himself. He had to escape the shadow of the sewer worker to find peace and prove to the world, and to himself, that he was more than a funny sidekick. His silence was his shield. In the end, the silence is the story. It's a quiet, haunting reminder that the amazing chemistry we see on screen doesn't always carry over into the messy reality of life. The magic of The Honeymooners will live forever in those timeless, classic 39 episodes, a perfect world frozen in time. But the story of Art Carney and Audrey Meadows shows that once the cameras turn off, even the brightest lights can fade. sometimes into a silence that lasts a lifetime. If you enjoyed this look behind the curtain of classic television and want more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And let us know in the comments what other classic TV mysteries you'd like us to look into.